Hey everyone, it's ZLR here, and today I'm going to be doing my Week 10 recap for the NFL season. And honestly, if you guys didn't see my community post from earlier today, my guinea pig uh, that I had for 5 years, along with my girlfriend, it passed away this morning. Um, I think it passed away during the night, so he most likely died peacefully sleeping. But I just hope I hope he's doing well uh where he is now. But uh but anyway, let's just get right into this. We had the Ravens and the Bengals going at it, with the Ravens win 35-34. Pretty good game here. We had Joe Burrow complete 34 passes out of 56 attempts for 428 yards and four touchdowns. Pretty good amount of yards there and shit. Like, goddamn. Uh, we had Chase Brown, 13 carries, 42 yards and a touchdown. Joe Burrow had two carries for 6 yards. And we had Tanner Hudson with one carry and 1 yard. Jamar Chase had a friggin' huge game. He had 11 receptions, 264 yards, and three touchdowns. Chase Brown had 9 receptions for 52 yards. Tanner Hudson had 6 receptions, 42 yards, and a touchdown. Mike Gesicki had 4 receptions for 30 yards. uh, Andre Losivas, I still believe his name is, uh, 2 receptions, 29 yards. We had Jermaine Burton with 1 reception for 11 yards. And we had Cam Grandy with 1 reception, but he didn't have anything because of it. We had Lamar Jackson complete 25 passes out of 33 attempts, 290 yards, and four touchdowns. Whew. For some reason, I just lost my breath completely. But gonna try my best to just get through at least this one. Derrick Henry, 16 carries, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson had 7 carries for 33 yards. Justice Hill had 2 carries, but had -2 yards. We had Tylan Wallace, 3 receptions for 115 yards and a touchdown. We had Mark Andrews, 6 receptions, 68 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Bateman with 6 receptions, 54 yards and a touchdown. Whew. Zay Flowers have 4 receptions, 34 yards. Nelson Aguilar with 1 reception, 6 yards, and a touchdown. Sorry about that. I had um just a random burp came out of nowhere. Deontay Johnson with 1 reception for 6 yards. We had Charlie Kohler with 1 reception for 4 yards. Derrick Henry with 1 reception for 3 yards. And Justice Hill with 2 receptions, but nothing because of it. Then we had the Giants and the Panthers, with the Panthers winning 20-17 in overtime in Germany. And this game was a shit show. This was a game where the United States said that we do not forgive you still for what happened back in the 1940s. Um I know it's not a joke, but damn. Like, this game was definitely not the greatest at all. And I feel like some German fans can agree with me on that one. But anyway, we had Daniel Jones, 22 completions out of 37 attempts, 190 yards, and 2 interceptions. Tyrone Tracy Jr. had 16 carries, 103 yards, and a touchdown. Devin Singletary had 8 carries for 40 yards. We had Daniel Jones with 7 carries, 26 yards, and a touchdown. Malik Neighbors had 1 carry for -2 yards. Wandale Robinson had 5 receptions, 51 yards. Malik Neighbors had 6 receptions for 50 yards. We had Jalen Hyatt with 4 receptions, 39 yards. We had Theo Johnson with 4 receptions, 37 yards. We had Isaiah Hodgins with 1 reception, 7 yards. Devin Singletary with 1 reception for 5 yards. And Tyrone Tracy Jr. with 1 reception for 1 yard. And for the Panthers side of things, we have Bryce Young, 15 completions out of 25 attempts for 126 yards and a touchdown. Chuba Hubbard had 28 carries, 153 yards and a touchdown. Brian Young had. Whew. Brian Young. What the fuck? No, Bryce Young. 2 carries, 30 yards. Miles Sanders, 2 carries for 5 yards. We had Jalen Coker with 3 receptions, 41 yards. Xavier Leggett with 3 receptions for 40 yards. We had David Moore with 2 receptions for 18 yards. Chuba Hubbard with 4 receptions, 16 yards. We had Jatavian Sanders with 2 receptions, 8 yards, and a touchdown. And not Isaiah Thomas, Ian Thomas. I don't know why I was about to say is Isaiah Thomas, but Ian Thomas had 1 reception for 3 yards. Then we had the Patriots and the Bears, with the Patriots winning at 19-3. This game I really didn't expect. Like, I felt like we could have won this game, but man, I did not think the Bears would have been that bad. But Drake May, 15 completions out of 25 attempts for 184 yards, a touchdown, and a interception. Ramondre Stevenson had 20 carries, 74 yards. Antonio Gibson had 5 carries for 26 yards. Drake May had 4 carries for 24 yards. And JaMycal Hasty had 6 carries for 20 yards. Austin Hooper had 3 receptions for 64 yards. Demario Douglas had 4 receptions, 50 yards. Kayshon Boutte had 4 receptions for 47 yards. Hunter Henry had 1 reception for 14 yards. So that's why I did bad on fantasy. Asshole. JaMycal Hasty with 1 reception for 4 yards. Ramondre Stevenson with 1 reception for 3 yards. Jalen Polk with 1 reception, 2 yards, and a touchdown. And nothing else there. For the Bears side of things, oh boy. Just oh boy. Caleb Williams, 16 completions out of 30 attempts for 120 yards. DeAndre Swift, 16 carries, 59 yards. Caleb Williams, 2 carries, 15 yards. DJ Moore, 1 carry for 3 yards. And Roschon Johnson with 1 carry for -4 yards. We had Keenan Allen with 5 receptions for 44 yards. DJ Moore with 3 receptions for 24 yards. Rome Odunze with 3 receptions for 23 yards. Cole Kmet with 2 receptions for 13 yards. DeAndre Swift with 1 reception for 6 yards. Roschon Johnson with 1 reception for 5 yards, as well as DeAndre Carter, who had the same amount. Then we had the 49ers and the Buccaneers. with the 49ers winning 23-20. And also, I'm gonna wear the hat for the rest of the video now because I just really want to. Brock Purdy had 25 completions at 36 attempts, 353 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Uh, a name that I can finally say after he's been out for so long. Christian McCaffrey, 13 carries, 39 yards. I wish he had a better performance than that. Um, we had Brock Purdy with 4 carries for 17 yards. Deebo Samuel with 3 carries for 14 yards. We had Jordan Mason with 1 carry for 5 yards. And Isaac Guerendo had 1 carry but didn't get anything out of it. We had Javon Jennings with 7 receptions, 93 yards. Ricky Pearsall with 4 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown. I think I was about to say 73 yards first, but I don't do that. I usually say the reception number first. Christian McCaffrey had have had um 6 receptions for 68 yards. I wish he had 1 more yard so I could have said nice. Deebo Samuel had 5 receptions for 62 yards, and George Kittle had 3 receptions, 57 yards, and a touchdown. For the Buccaneers side of things, we have Baker Mayfield, 18 completions out of 29 attempts, 116 yards, and a touchdown. Bucky Irving had 13 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown. Rashad White had 10 carries, 31 yards. Baker Mayfield had 3 carries for 3 yards. And Sterling Shepard had 1 carry for 3 yards. Rashad White had 6 receptions, 39 yards, and a touchdown. We had Cade Otton with 5 receptions for 35 yards. Bucky Irving with 3 receptions for 14 yards. We have Ryan Miller with 1 reception for 11 yards. We had Raheem Jarrett with 2 receptions for 10 yards. We had Sterling Shepard with 1 reception for 7 yards. Then we had the Broncos and the Chiefs, with the Chiefs winning at 16-14 in a pretty decent game. Bo Nix had 22 completions out of 30 attempts, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Audric Estime had 14 carries, 53 yards. We had Marvin Mims with 3 carries, 17 yards. We had Jaleel McLaughlin with 2 carries for 12 yards. We had Javonte Williams with 1 carry for 1 yard. We have Bo Nix with 3 carries for -5 yards. Cortland Sutton with 6 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. We had Devon Vele with 4 receptions, 39 yards, and a touchdown. We had oh no. Come on, I click on the name. Stupid. Adam Trotman. That's who it is. Okay. Why did my phone acting? My phone just hates Wi-Fi in this house. Uh, we had Adam Trotman with 1 reception, 34 yards. We had LeJordan Humphrey with 2 receptions for 23 yards. We had Lucas Kroll with 2 receptions for 21 yards. Marvin Mims with 4 receptions, 13 yards. We had Troy Franklin with 1 reception for 9 yards. And Javonte Williams with 2 receptions for 6 yards. Then we had the Kansas City Chiefs. I do not like the Chiefs, but I respect them. Patrick Mahomes, 28 completions out of 42 attempts, 266 yards, and a touchdown. Kareem Hunt had 14 carries for 35 yards. Patrick Mahomes had 3 carries for 19 yards. And Carson Steele had 2 carries for 3 yards. Kareem Hunt had 7 receptions, 65 yards. Travis Kelce had 8 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins had 4 receptions, 56 yards. Sam J. Piron had 2 receptions for 37 yards. Noah Gray had 2 receptions for 18 yards. Xavier Worthy had 1 reception for 11 yards. We had Justin Watson, 2 receptions for 6 yards. Peyton Hendershot with 1 reception, 6 yards. And Mecole Hardman Jr. with 1 reception for 3 yards. Then we had the Bills and the Colts, with the Bills winning at 30-20. We had Josh Allen complete 22 passes out of 37 attempts, 280 yards, and 2 interceptions. James Cook had 19 carries, 80 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Allen had 8 carries, 50 yards, and a touchdown. We have Ray Davis with 3 carries for 6 yards, and Mitchell Trubisky with 1 carry for -1 yard. We had Matt Collins with 4 receptions, 86 yards. Khalil Shakir with 6 receptions for 58 yards. Dawson Knox with 2 receptions for 40 yards. Curtis Samuel with 4 receptions, 35 yards. We had Ty Johnson with 3 receptions for 32 yards. Dalton Kincaid with 2 receptions for 24 yards. And James Cook with 1 reception for 5 yards. We had the Colts, Joe Flacco, 26 completions out of 35 attempts, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Jonathan Taylor had 21 carries for 114 yards. And we had Ashton Dulin with 1 carry for 7 yards. Then we had Alec Pierce, 4 receptions, 81 yards, and a touchdown. Josh Downs had 7 receptions for 72 yards. Adonai Mitchell had 6 receptions, 71 yards. We had Kylan Granson with 2 receptions for 15 yards. We had Will Mallory with 1 reception, 10 yards. We had Tyler Goodson with 2 receptions, 9 yards, and a touchdown. We had Jonathan Taylor with 2 receptions, 8 yards. Trey Sermon with 1 reception for 4 yards. And Andrew Ogletree with 1 reception for 2 yards. Then we had the Steelers and the Commanders, with the Steelers winning at 28-27. Honestly, I really wanted the Commanders to win because that would have been nice. That would have been nice to see. Instead of 7-3, they could have been 8-2. Russell Wilson have 14 completions out of 28 attempts, 195 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a interception. We also had Miles Killebrew, I believe his name is, or Killebrew, with 1 attempt at passing. Didn't complete it. We had Jaylen Warren, 14 carries for 66 yards. Najee Harris with 21 carries, 53 yards, and a touchdown. We had Cordell Patterson with 3 carries for 14 yards. George Pickens with 1 carry for 4 yards. And Russell Wilson with 4 carries for 3 yards. George Pickens had 5 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Mike Williams had 1 reception, 32 yards, and a touchdown. We had Jaylen Warren, two receptions, 29 yards. We had Alvin Austin with 2 receptions, 20 yards. Pat Freiermuth with 3 receptions, 17 yards, and a touchdown. we also had Darnell Washington with 1 reception for 6 yards. And for the Commanders side of things, we had Jaden Daniels, 17 completions out of 34 attempts and 202 yards. Austin Eckler, 13 carries, 44 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Jeremy McNichols with 4 carries, 7 yards, and a touchdown. We had Jaden Daniels, 3 carries for 5 yards, and Chris Rodriguez Jr. with 2 carries for 4 yards. We had Scary Terry with 5 receptions, 113 yards. We had Noah Brown with 3 receptions for 33 yards. Zach Ertz with 4 receptions for 31 yards. Luke McCaffrey with 1 reception for 23 yards. Omalide Zacchaeus with 1 reception, 8 yards. Austin Eckler had 1 reception for 7 yards. And Dyami Brown had 2 receptions for -13 yards. Then we had the Vikings and the Jaguars, with the Vikings win this one 12-7. Probably one of the worst games of the week, I can say that, stat wise at least, for scoring. We had Sam Darnold with 24 completions out of 38 attempts, 241 yards, and 3 interceptions. We had Aaron Jones with 17 carries for 88 yards. We had Cam Akers with 13 carries, 38 yards. Sam Darnold with 7 carries for 28 yards. Ty Chandler with 4 carries for 28 yards. 18 yards. Jordan Addison with 1 carry for 4 yards. And Jalen Naylor with 1 carry for -7 yards. TJ Hawkinson had 8 receptions for 72 yards. We had Josh Oliver with 4 receptions for 52 yards. Justin Jefferson with 5 receptions, 48 yards. Jordan Addison with 2 receptions for 25 yards. Aaron Jones with 2 receptions, 13 yards. We had Trent Sherfield Sr. and Jalen Naylor with 1 reception for 11 yards. And Cam Akers had 1 reception for 9 yards. For the Jaguars side of things, we have Mac Jones with 14 completions out of 22 attempts, 111 yards, and 2 interceptions. Not a good game from Mac. That sucks. Travis Etienne had 11 carries for 44 yards. Mac Jones had 5 carries, 8 yards, and a touchdown. At least he got one there. Tank Bigsby had 2 carries for 4 yards. Evan Ingram had 6 receptions, 40 yards. We had Brenton Strange with 2 receptions, 25 yards. Gabriel Davis with 1 reception, 19 yards. Luke Farrell with 2 receptions, 16 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. with 2 receptions, 12 yards. And Travis Etienne Jr. with 1 reception with -1 yard. Then we had the Falcons and the Saints, with the Saints win at 20-17. We had Kirk Cousins, 23 completions out of 38 attempts, 306 yards, and a interception. We had Bijan Robinson with 20 carries, 116 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tyler Algier with 11 carries for 59 yards. And Ray McLeod with 1 carry for 6 yards. We had Drake London, 8 receptions, 97 yards. Darnell Mooney with 5 receptions, 96 yards. Kyle Pitts with 4 receptions, 55 yards. Ray McLeod with 3 receptions, 30 yards. Bijan Robinson with 3 receptions, 28 yards. And for the Saints side of things, we had Derek Carr, 16 completions out of 25 attempts, 269 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara had 17 carries, 55 yards. Derek Carr had 4 carries for 17 yards. We had Taysom Hill with 4 carries for 14 yards, and Jordan Mims with 2 carries for 10 yards. then we had Marcus Valdes-Scantling with 3 receptions, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara with 5 receptions, 54 yards. Taysom Hill with 2 receptions, 36 yards, as well as Kevin Austin, who had the same amount. Javon Johnson with 2 receptions for 22 yards. We had Dante Pettis with 1 reception, 8 yards, and Jordan Mims with 1 reception for 4 yards. Then we had the Titans and the Chargers, with the Chargers winning this one 27-17. We have Will Levis with 18 completions out of 23 attempts, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Tyjae Spears had 7 carries for 47 yards. We had Tony Pollard with 9 carries for 44 yards. If I said receptions for Tyjae, I'm sorry, I meant carries. Will Levis, 5 carries, 41 yards. Calvin Ridley with 5 receptions, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We had Nick Westbrook with 3 receptions, 31 yards. We had Bryce Oliver with 2 receptions, 23 yards. Tony Pollard had 4 receptions, 19 yards. Chig Okonkwo with 1 reception, 14 yards. And Tyjae Spears with 3 receptions for 4 yards. And for the Chargers side of things, we had Justin Herbert, 14 completions out of 18 attempts, 164 yards, and a touchdown. We had Gus Edwards with 10 carries, 55 yards. J.K. Dobbins had 15 carries for 50 yards. Justin Herbert had 9 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown. We had Darius Davis with 1 carry for 6 yards. We had Hassan Haskins with 2 carries, 4 yards, and a touchdown. And Jalen Reagor with 2 carries, -2 yards. Lab McConkey had 2 receptions, 52 yards. We had Joshua Palmer with 1 reception for 36 yards. Will Dissly with 5 receptions, 30 yards. Quentin Johnston with 2 receptions, 24 yards, and a touchdown. We had Darius Davis with 1 reception, 17 yards. And J.K. Dobbins with 3 receptions for 5 yards. And then we had the Cardinals and the Jets, with the Cardinals getting the win here 31-6. Man, I did not think I would ever see Aaron Rodgers getting blown out like this. But he definitely doesn't look good now. We had Aaron Rodgers, 22 completions out of 35 attempts for 151 yards. We had Breece Hall with 10 carries, 52 yards, and Braylon Allen with 7 carries for 27 yards. That is a lot of receivers. Holy shit. Garrett Wilson, 5 receptions, 41 yards. Devontae Adams had 6 receptions for 31 yards. Breece Hall had 4 receptions for 31 yards. We had Jeremy Ruckert with 2 receptions, 17 yards. We had Isaiah Davis with 1 reception, 10 yards. We had Tyler Conklin with 1 reception for 8 yards. We had Braylon Allen with 1 reception, 7 yards. Kenny Yeboah with 1 reception, 4 yards. And Malachi Corley with 1 reception, 2 yards. I'm surprised he even got a reception at all. Kyler Murray, 22 completions out of 24 attempts, 266 yards, and a touchdown. We have Trey Benson with 10 carries, 62 yards. We have James Conner with 12 carries, 33 yards, and a touchdown. We have Amari Demercado with 3 carries, 22 yards. Kyler Murray with 3 carries, 21 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We had DJ Dallas with 3 carries for 10 yards. And Clayton Tune with 1 carry, -1 yard. James Conner had 5 receptions, 80 yards. Trey McBride had 4 receptions, 71 yards. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 5 receptions, 54 yards, and a touchdown. We had Trey Benson with 2 receptions, 25 yards. Michael Wilson, 3 receptions for 24 yards. Elijah Higgins with 2 receptions for 13 yards. And Greg Dortch with 1 reception, -1 yard. Then we had the Eagles and the Cowboys, with the Eagles winning at 34-6. Jalen Hurts had 14 completions out of 20 attempts, 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a interception. Kenny Pickett had 1 completion out of 2 attempts for 5 yards. We had Saquon Barkley with 14 carries, 66 yards. Jalen Hurts had 7 carries, 56 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Will Shipley had 9 carries, 34 yards. Kenneth Gainwell had 7 carries for 30 yards. And Kenny Pickett had 1 carry for 1 yard. Sorry about that burp, by the way. Excuse me. A.J. Brown had 5 receptions, 109 yards. Jahan Dotson had 1 reception for 27 yards. Dallas Goedert had 2 receptions, 25 yards, and a touchdown. We had Devonta Smith with 2 receptions for 14 yards. Saquon Barkley had 1 reception for 12 yards. Kenneth Gainwell had 1 reception for 9 yards. We had Ainias Smith with 2 receptions, 6 yards. I believe that's a new name I haven't seen yet this season. Johnny Wilson with 1 reception, 5 yards, and a touchdown. For the Cowboys side, we have Cooper Rush with 13 completions out of 23 attempts, 45 yards. Ugh. And Trey Lance, 4 completions out of 6 attempts for 21 yards and a interception. There was only 66 yards passing. Holy crap, this Cowboys team is junk. They really need fucking they really need that boy friggin' Dak Prescott there, because he's not. Jerry Jones, what the fuck? This team is ass, dude. But anyway, Rico Dowdle with 12 carries, 53 yards. Ezekiel Elliott had 6 carries, 22 yards. Trey Lance had 3 carries for 17 yards. CeeDee Lamb had 1 carry for 3 yards. Cooper Rush had 2 carries for 2 yards. We had Jake Ferguson with 4 receptions, 24 yards. CeeDee Lamb with 6 receptions for 21 yards. We had Jalen Tolbert with 3 receptions, 14 yards. Jalen Brooks with 1 reception for 4 yards. And Rico Dowdle with 3 receptions for 3 yards. Then we had the Lions and the Texans, with the Lions winning it 26-23. Jared Goff had 15 completions out of 30 attempts, 240 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. Jahmyr Gibbs had 19 carries, 71 yards. David Montgomery had 12 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown. Jared Goff had 1 carry for 2 yards. Sam Laporta had 3 receptions, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 6 receptions, 60 yards, and a touchdown. We had Jameson Williams with 3 receptions for 53 yards, Jahmyr Gibbs with 2 receptions for 37 yards, and David Montgomery with 1 reception for 24 yards. For the Texans side, we had CJ Stroud, 19 completions out of 33 attempts, 232 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Joe Mixon had 25 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. Dare Ungumbale had 1 carry for 11 yards. CJ Stroud had 1 carry for 5 yards, and Tank Dell had 1 carry for -6 yards. We had John Mechie with 5 receptions, 74 yards, and a touchdown. Dalton Schultz had 3 receptions, 66 yards. Joe Mixon had 2 receptions, 44 yards. Tank Dell had 5 receptions for 39 yards. Xavier Hutchinson with 2 receptions for 6 yards. Cade Stover with 1 reception for 2 yards. And Robert Woods with 1 reception for 1 yard. And for the last game of the week, we had the Dolphins and the Rams, with the Dolphins winning at 23-15. We had Tua Tagovailoa with 20 completions out of 28 attempts, 207 yards, a touchdown, and a interception. Devon Achane with 12 carries, 37 yards. We had Malik Washington with 1 carry, 18 yards, and a touchdown. We had Tyreek Hill with 2 carries for 11 yards. We had Jalen Wright with 5 carries, 3 yards. Tua Tagovailoa had 1 carry, -1 yard, as well as Jalen Waddle. We had Jalen Waddle with 3 receptions, 57 yards. Jonnu Smith with 3 receptions, 45 yards. Raheem Mostert with 2 receptions, 34 yards. Odell Beckham with 2 receptions, 17 yards. Malik Washington with 1 reception, 17 yards. Tyreek Hill with 3 receptions, 16 yards, and a touchdown. Devon Achane with 5 receptions, 15 yards. Durham Smith with 1 reception, 6 yards. And for the Rams side of things, we have Matthew Stafford with 32 completions out of 46 attempts, 293 yards, and a interception. Kyren Williams had 15 carries for 62 yards. Blake Corum had 2 carries, 8 yards. And Matthew Stafford had a carry but didn't get anything out of it. Puka Nacua had 9 receptions, 98 yards. Cooper Kupp had 7 receptions for 80 yards. We had Davis Allen with 5 receptions, 34 yards. We had Tyler Johnson with 3 receptions, 25 yards. We had Demarcus Robinson with 1 reception, 23 yards. We had Kyren Williams with 5 receptions for 20 yards. Blake Corum with 1 reception for 7 yards. And Tutu Atwell with 1 reception for 6 yards. And that is going to be it for this recap video. Tomorrow will be my little predictions video that you guys always like to see. So I hope you all enjoy that one when it comes out. But as always, hope you guys like, subscribe, comment, do really whatever you want to do. And as always, I'll see you all in the next one. See you around.